college radio DJs during the 90s. Hosts Keith and Steve helped expose bands like Nirvana, Pavement, and PJ Harvey. They went to shows, interviewed musicians, and reviewed albums for various zines and papers. They worked security at concerts and once even did load in for Fish. Now they're dads. Whether you want to explore lesser-known music or take a trip down memory lane, tune into the New Dad Rock. Join hosts Keith and Steve as they navigate the ages together, sharing their love of music across various eras and genres. Always well-intentioned, often well-informed, seldom boring, the New Dad Rock will expand your mind.
Welcome to the New Dad Rock. We are back after a semi-hiatus.
No, it's just a seasonal thing, dude.
Yeah, we are hibernating.
Seasonal.
We're hibernating for the winter.
Well, you were not hibernating at all. You were skiing.
I did ski. So this year I skied more miles than I've ever skied in a season before. However, I did fall short on the vertical, which means I didn't ski as steep of trails on average.
Wait, hold on. You know this because you have an app?
Yeah, I have an app that's been tracking my ski seasons for the last 6 years. A good day is like 20,000 vertical or 20 miles, roughly. That's like a solid full day.
20, yeah. Okay.
So that means you're seeing, on average, pretty steep stuff. A flatter day, if you're in like low angle glades or something, you might have like a 0.85 ratio. Or if you're at Whiteface, you have like a 1.3 ratio because that mountain is so steep.
Does this keep miles driven and nights stayed and beers drunk?
Yeah,
because that would be a really cool app.
It does not include that, but it does. It does come with a playlist. But anyway, for those of you who are new to the New Dad Rock, welcome. I'm Steve.
I'm Keith. And together we are two dads rocking the ages together. That's not it.
Gallivanting through the ages.
Speaking of music, what have you been listening to lately?
Well, I have my Esquiando playlist, which is kind of... I like jammier, more rocking, like rock and roll... guitar-based stuff on those sort of trips because it's long, it's repetitive, it's a long drive.
It's the same reason I like electronic music is like the continuous nature of the music, or like even jam music. Like
there'll be Primus, of course, King Gizzard, Captain Swamp, which I believe is some like Mexican psychedelic guy. Yeah. I have a couple of jam things.
Dr. Swamp.
Babe Rainbow, the OCs, Quicksilver Messenger Service. Yeah, I mean, some Rush instrumentals are nice. You don't always want that. But then I'll throw in some, like, old stuff, like some deep cuts by Syd Barrett or a more recent band that I'm digging, especially their live stuff, is Goat.
Goat? Like Goat. All capital G-O-A-T or just capital G?
I think it's just Goat. I think it's just, like, the animal. I've noticed there's a lot of animal bands lately. There's, like, Squid... There's Geese and Goose, which I'm not really sure which one's which.
Oh, no, I'll tell you.
I think Geese is better, right? Geese is the better one. They're the more Ween-esque because of the double E.
I'm going to guess. I'll tell you right now. Goose is the Fish jam band, and Geese is the band that's like hippier.
Is the Ween jam band.
And open for... King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. But yeah, we're going to see them when we see their tour this summer. We're going to see Geese.
Yeah. Anyway, so you asked me what I've been listening to. Some of the newer stuff is Carcara, which is this French psychedelic band from Toulouse, France.
Can you spell Fakara?
It's Carcara, Karkara.
Nice.
And they're from Toulouse, France. Arab Strap has a new album about to drop, and they've put a few singles
to 3 of their
out.
Songs. Yep.
They're good.
I
Facts.
like it.
Facts.
Oh wait, Facts has something new?
They do. Only one song has made it out so far.
I see.
Our old pal Kim Gordon, who, by the way, I believe is 71 years old. She's definitely over 70.
Yeah.
She put out a new album. It's called The Collective. It's like SoundCloud rap. It's bizarre. That's all I'll say.
I'm pretty sure I read that beat was actually going to like a hip hop artist, and like it ended up there. And also, I read her book. Did you read Kim Gordon's book? It was awesome.
I read that a couple of years ago, and I also more recently read Thurston Moore's book.
Uh-huh.
And Let me tell you, I thought Kim's book was good, and she focused a lot on the her artistic background and working at galleries and the links between Sonic Youth and artists throughout their career. Gerhard Richter being the most obvious with the album cover for Daydream Nation.
Yep.
But Thurston's was, I feel like reading a teenage girl's journals. And she went to some really cool shows, let me tell you. But, like, we just did a series on the 70s, and we delved several years in the punk rock scene. Thurston Moore spends about 450 pages talking about the period between, like, January of 1978 to, like, March of 1979. So, you know, everything about the punk scene. If you want to go back, you can listen to our episodes, or you can spend about 6 hours with Thurston Moore's high school journal.
Well, so I may or may not have told you this before, but there's 2 books I read. One was Echo and the Bunnyman. I mean, it was called Bunnyman, and it was by the guitarist. Was that Will Sargent or whatever? And it basically ends before they record their first full album. So it's like he does not meet the singer, Ian McCulloch, into page 203, 206. But then I read, was it Richard Wright? It was Richard Wright with Pink Floyd, the keyboardist. And it starts, I met, you know, the bassist, like, you know, Roger Waters, like, in the first 10 words. So they were diametrically opposed, so very interesting.
Well, Rick Wright was kicked out of Pink Floyd toward the end and was actually a session musician
for The Wall.
And I think on The Wall he actually made more money because he was paid as a session musician, and the cost of production was so high that the members of Pink Floyd didn't even make any money. So
you're 100% right. You're 100% right.
Funny flip of the switch. But yeah, Thurston Moore's book was very thin, or very thick about that, and very thin about the later years. And in fact, I love his solo album from 1995, Psychic Hearts.
Yeah.
And he only mentions it in like reference to like his 2015 solo album. He's like my first solo album since Psychic Hearts. And I'm like, why didn't you talk about that? I wanted to hear it.
Dude, I gotta tell you, I bet Psychic Hearts is in my top 20 albums. Like my if I had a top 20, I know people do top 10s. If I had a top 20, I mean, I think that's like 15, 16. I love that album.
Yeah, you could put it right on Desert Island. Let me tell you, I think this might have been the first album for you that I recorded in a different order. I remember doing this, I was listening to it one night, and this stream of songs, it must have been on shuffle, caught my attention, and I'm like, this is how you have to listen to this album, and I recorded it that way and sent it to you. So
I think
that might have been the first time I ever did that.
Oh, really?
But I gave you the full album. But it was like the Modest Mouse one, which we talked about way back in like episode 4. Yeah. I didn't give you the whole album.
Was that because you ran out of tape, or you got bored, or it just you didn't include it?
I think I just didn't like that album that much, and I was like, here are the good songs.
Really? I swear that's like this second or third best of their albums. Speaking of which, tickets I bought since I've told the audience, I probably have tickets to a dozen shows this year. I saw the Dead Milkmen already. I have tickets to Sarah McLachlan's Fumbling Towards Ecstasy. I have the Ween Chocolate and Cheese 30. Is that a 30-year anniversary? I saw them on tour in
94.
Rochester. Jesus, so. Yeah. Is that 40 fucking years? No, 30, thank God. 30 years. I saw them at the Horizontal Boogie Bar in Rochester.
Yeah, so, Dead Milkmen, tell me a little bit about that, and I will tell you, because I saw Sarah McLachlan in concert last year.
I'm so jealous. I mean, the Dead Milkmen was a fine show. They're from Philly. They're at the Underground Arts. I mean, they got to be in their 60s, except one guy died, so they have a
Dave Blood,
younger replacement guy who... How do you know this?
Because I was a fan of the Dead Milkmen, and...
I have even more shows to go to. I'm seeing, actually, check this out. I'm seeing Hook, and what's it called? Hook and the Peter Hook, and he has some band, whatever it's called. It's Peter Hook and blah, blah, blah. But they're doing Substance, both the Joy Division version and the New Order version. And those are the...
Wow.
And Substance, if you don't know, is the title of the best ofs for both those bands, Joy Division and New Order. And Joy Division's last album came out in 1980, Closer. Came out a month after the lead singer hung himself backstage And it's also when their song, Love Will Tear Us Apart, was it number 1 or something, or whatever it was. It was released a month after his death in 1980, which is important because 1980 is important to this episode, right, Steve?
Yeah, so after doing somewhat of a history lesson in the 70s, so episodes 70 through 79, where we took on a year each of the 70s from more of a historical, educational, academic sort of lens.
As if we were like 1 to 7 years old.
Right, but it's a lot of the things that informed what we've listened to over the last 30 years, and plenty of albums that we still listen to this day because they still sound fresh and resonate with a modern ear. But now, 1980, for me, was the year that I really was cognizant of music. I was an active listener. It wasn't just what was on the radio. I actually went to bed and I put my clock radio on and listened to 92 FLY or Pix 106 to find the music that I wanted to hear. And what I clearly remember, I have a lot of major milestones and decades. In 1980, I moved from my childhood home to the other house that I lived in my childhood. 1990, I graduated high school. 2000, I got married. So
You've had a rough life.
I have a good eye for divisions and decades. And this, for the 80s, this is when we were really listening to music. I mean, I remember hearing these songs on the radio.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a little more research. I may not be cognizant yet. Pac-Man Fever is the first album I remember dying to want, and that's 1982.
Okay. All right, so maybe I'm a little bit just ahead of the game here. So speaking of the game, Queen, The Game, I think was the number 1 album of the year. I know Another One Bites the Dust was the number 1 song. But Hall & Oates, Kisses on My List, Please Don't Stand So Close to Me, It's Still Rock and Roll to Me by Billy Joel. That might have been my favorite song then. Jesse's Girl, I listened to AC/DC, whatever was out then. I think it was Hell's Bell, or Highway to Hell was then. Pink Floyd, Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2.
My kids sing that now.
Yeah, We Don't Need No Education. It's an all-time classic. So these are things I listened to at the time. So now I feel like when we do these episodes and I think we should keep it up, each year we'll revisit 80, 81, 82, etc. And we can talk about the things we listen to. So I guess in your case it was whatever mom and dad listened to. So I guess it was dad rock.
Well, it was my dad's rock. It's not the new dad rock. I don't want to say old dad rock, but yeah, probably. No, it might be pre-dad rock. I mean, he listened to In-A-Gadda Vida, right? It was that Iron Butterfly. He listened to Creedence Clearwater Revival. He listened to Led Zeppelin, I think. I think the Rolling Stones. Yeah, it was that. That's classic rock. That's pre-dad rock.
Exactly.
Hey, totally random, 1980s, Funky Town, big song. Do you know who wrote or sang Funky Town? No one does. I'm looking.
Is it like Lips Incorporated or something?
Holy fuck! I'm sorry. Beep. How do you know that? How'd you get that? Okay, whatever.
Because I've put it on a playlist and I'm like, who the hell is this? You know, because how do you find things and put them on playlists? That's all I know. But was that right? Lip?
Yeah, 100%. It's Lips Inc. Yeah, capital I-N-C period. Tell me this: who had a song called "Upside Down" in 1980?
Upside down.
Oh, damn you.
Boy, turn me inside out.
Dude, you have,
and round.
Okay. You don't even have to
Upside down, you're turning me. Who is that, the Bee Gees?
No, it's Diana Ross. But she was huge.
Diana Ross.
The whole late 70s. Yeah, you nailed it, too. In fact, I was playing, I have a playlist from the 80s. I was prepping for the show. I was cooking dinner. And that song was on. And my wife walks in, and she can sing the whole song, and she's singing it. She never sings. I was like, oh my God. Wow. Very proud of you, Steve. Very proud. All right, so it's the 1980s. Well, for me, it's still a little pre-Keith, if you will.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned before, I think Joy Division is what stands out for me that year, because they released their second and final album. It's a post-punk masterpiece. It's right before Ian Curtis. He has epilepsy, and his seizures are becoming worse. So he hangs himself in 1980. But they released their second album, Closer, right after that, and that includes the song "Love Will Tear Us Apart."
Yeah. So for me, and I didn't listen to this in 1980, but in 1 week's time, between April 11th and April 18th, the albums British Steel by Judas Priest, Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath, featuring Ronnie James Dio on lead vocals, and Iron Maiden's debut album all came out within 1 week of each other in April of 1980, which... that has to be amazing, like to have gone through that and experienced that in a 7-day period, just being blown away by all-time classic albums.
Yeah, I bet most people couldn't afford buying 3 albums at that time. You'd probably have to buy it on vinyl, right?
Yeah. I remember one of my friends, his older brother, bought an album every week. Like Friday, he'd get his paycheck, or he'd go to the mall Friday night and he'd buy an album every week.
I did that for years, for sure, except there were CDs probably. No, I might have done with vinyl actually for a bit. The record collection, which was the record store right by my high school, once I got my first hi-fi stereo, which I got from Sears, because I worked at Sears, so I got a 10% discount. I spent a couple $100. And I got, record player, whatever. My first 2 records were Echo and the Bunnymen, Bed Bugs and Bellevue single, which had a painted black cover on the back by the Rolling Stones, and Run, 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 which I think is a Velvet Underground cover. But Echo and the Bunnymen, 1980, Crocodile comes out.
Yeah. So also in 1980, Bauhaus in the Flat Field.
Dude, I had that.
Starts off with Double Dare.
Oh, Jesus.
God in the Alcove is on that. Other albums from... 1980, the one that I mentioned a couple years ago, and it was funny, I mentioned, I think in 2022 I was in their top 100 listeners on Apple Music. The Wipers, Is This Real? Which is a crazy, totally inspirational to Nirvana, but they are Portland, West Coast punks. Wipers, Is This Real? I would highly recommend it. And if you listen to it 5 times, you'll be in the top 100 listeners, according to Apple Music.
Dude, it might be easier or harder now. You don't know.
Yeah. But let's see. Who else was putting albums out?
Dude,
Peter Gabriel, the 3rd album, Melt, with Intruder and Biko. And
2 of the best songs. Possibly the 2 best songs. Possibly the 2.
Games Without Frontiers is on that album, too.
Wow. So 3 of the top 5.
It's really probably his best. The Cure, 17 Seconds.
So their second
still
album?
early, but A Forest, Play for Today, it had some classics on there.
I'll tell you this, John Lennon, so in preparation for this episode, 6 months ago, by the way, or whenever we ended last season, I'm like, oh my God, I want to get ahead. So I listened to things from the 1980s. I listened for the first time ever to John Lennon's Double Fantasy album. Have you ever listened to that album? With Yoko?
I have not listened to it all the way through. I've probably hit a couple highlights.
Yeah, so it was a month before he died. So that was the last album, 1980. So 1980 is a big transition year.
It's also a big transition year for a band that I'm sure we're going to get into a little bit later in the 80s. And we might bring our old friend Brian to talk about them, but Rush. They released their album Permanent Waves on January 1st, 1980.
Is that their first album?
It's not their first album. It's, what is it, their 7th album?
Wow.
8th album? But all of their albums in the 70s are known for 15, 20, 25-minute full-side, song suites that are instrumental, very pretentious, sometimes sci-fi influenced. They come back in 1980 with Permanent Waves, 6 slick songs. All 6 songs are amazing. And it kind of... They, like me, moved into a different house and became a kind of a different band.
That's amazing. You know what other house was important then? Talking
Glass Houses?
Heads. Once in a Lifetime. I messed that up. I'll tell you this. You know what came out that year was OMD's Organization. And the only reason I know that, they have a song called Enola Gay. I was just in Japan. And, but that was the first concert I went to, and they were the opening band for Depeche Mode. And the OMD played Enola Gay at Jones Beach Amphitheater on Long Island. So that was the first band I saw live. I went to Depeche Mode, first concert, but OMD was the opening band I saw.
All right.
Came out in 1980, Enola Gay.
Clearly a lot of things that we still listen to that still sound fresh today that might not appear on your classic rock, might not appear on your hits radio, might not even appear on your left of the dial alternative. But these songs are out there, and they're waiting to be rediscovered. And hopefully the new Dad Rock can take you through the 80s, not only reminiscing down the lane that we traveled, the winding road to the abyss at times.
Yeah, and remember the things that were super important when songs like Queen's Another One Bites the Dust was used by the Junkyard Dog as his intro song for Worldwide Wrestling Federation, where Mr. T and Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik were important wrestlers. Man, I miss the 80s. Dude, it was awesome. I was at the first WrestleMania. I love that shit. The Pied Piper. Yeah. Oh, that was a fight. Mr. Wonderful. Oh, do you remember the Snooker Brothers? Woo! We got to talk about wrestling. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, I mean, what else? I know things that you love about the 80s Magnum PI.
What? Oh, man. Well, we have a lot to talk about, so I'm excited to hang out with you over the next couple months as we go through our next season, the 80s.
Thanks for listening to the New Dad Rock. Tell your friends that we rock.